Good afternoon, everybody. It's Kathy with Wool Maven, and today we have finally set up the Zoom recording, so that's exciting. We're going to go for a little bit different format of more straightforward podcast. Today's topic is going to be, got it written down, the things that I consider have kind of upped my spinning game. I'm checking over there to make sure we're still recording. So anyway, what has upped my spinning game? And for anybody who's new here, I've been spinning for a while. Oh gosh, maybe like 20 years. But honestly, I was spinning poorly, very, very poorly. And a few things that I've gotten recently, or at least in the past couple years, have really, really made a difference. And strictly speaking, they're not necessary. They're not necessary. But wow, did they really help me out? So that's what the subject of today's podcast is going to be all about. So welcome. Glad you're here. Before we get started, I do want to invite you to take my free mini course. If you haven't, just go to woolmaven.com/free, sign up, and it's a 7-video course that'll get you going. I do want to point out it is made mainly for beginners. So if you kind of sort of know what you're doing, you're probably more advanced than this course. But if you want to check it out anyway, that's super. But if you are new, this course is perfect for you. If you're overspinning, or if you almost wish you were overspinning, I remember that happened to me a ton when I was getting started. I'd get at the wheel and it would just rip it out of my hands, rip it out of my hands. So if that's where you're at, this course will help you out. Anyway, woolmaven.com/free and sign up for the free course. The first thing I got, aside from my wheel, and I was at the time using our fiber from our own sheep. So the first thing I got to help me up my game, because I was trying to do just spinning our own fiber with kind of the things I had around home, and it just wasn't working out. It just wasn't working out. So I realized I needed to prep the fiber a little bit better, and I got hand cards. I got a set of, I think they're Clems and Clems, just your very normal, I'd say 72 TPI curved back hand cards, and they made a big difference. I do have to admit, what would have made more of a difference is if I would have went a little bit slower. I tend to cram a lot on there. One of the easiest upgrades, at least that I found, once you have your wheel and you have something to spin, one of the easiest upgrades is to get a set of hand cards. And granted, they're not cheap, but they do make quite a bit of difference and give you a lot more versatility than just working with the fiber as is. So I would say that upped my game quite a bit. And I've had these hand cards for, oh gosh, probably almost 20 years as well. The next thing I tried, because once again, I'm working with my own fleeces. So the next thing I tried was to go with a flick carder. And for anybody who doesn't know, it's probably 6 or 8 inches long, and it has a little paddle on the end of it, and a kind of long stick. And you more slap it on the edge of the lock, and it pulls and it straightens out the end of the lock. So if you do a lot of fleece spinning or your own fiber prep from your own sheep or local sheep, then a flick carder is handy because it just opens up the locks. Like, especially with ours, I end up with, I'll call them crunchy tips. And then the butt end, which is the shorn end that was closest to the sheep, still just kind of compacted together. So it's not like the whole thing needs completely and totally separated out. But if I just flick the ends and then flick the other end, and what you end up with is the little lock you had ends up looking more like a bow tie. And then it's pretty easy to spin. Now, granted, that's still going to be more of, at least the way I do it, that's still going to be more of a worsted prep. So you're looking for the denser, all fibers in a line, smooth. And I should have mentioned that in case you didn't know, the hand cards that I got, those are more considered a woolen prep, so more fluffy. And the flick carder would be more still keep the fibers mostly together, just opened up enough that you can draft them out and use them. So anyway, I went with hand carders first, then I went with flick carder, and that did help me quite a bit just because it's a little bit handier. If you wanted to, you could use the hand cards kind of sort of as a flick card, but honestly, it's a small little thing and it's pretty easy to get a hold of. And if fleece is what you're normally working with, nice. Nice. Or even like if you're buying locks, that kind of thing, half a fleece, all that. It works out pretty good. Then the next thing I got, and this honestly, this probably isn't what you're expecting because it's not really equipment. But I finally decided to up my game here, which is the subject of the podcast, and go with an actual wool specific fiber wash. And I went with Unicorn Power Scour because I tend to, as I've mentioned, work with raw fleeces. And it made a ton of difference, just a ton of difference. I have used dish soap, and for me, and I'm not sure if I was using it incorrectly or there was a step I didn't quite get right, or, and to be fair, we are working with hard water here, so maybe that's the issue. But I always feel like the fiber after I use dish soap, because you have to use quite a bit after I use dish soap, it ends up almost not quite crunchy, but a little bit scorched, a little bit dry. And I don't like that. I mean, I want it clean, but I don't want it like parched. And then the actual, so I could have fixed that by using just less, or maybe washing it 3 times instead of twice, something like that. But the real kind of nail in the coffin for me with dish soap was that I was working with a fleece that went in. Okay, not true. It should have turned out white, and instead it turned out like dingy sock off white. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. Once again, we do have well water, so maybe it was just something with the water that week. But I didn't notice anything else anywhere that was weird, except for that fleece, which is, as I mentioned, was Finn, came out kind of dingy instead of coming out white. So super disappointing. So I tend to steer clear of dish detergent. I have to admit, I have heard plenty of other people on Facebook and other places that they seem to get quite a bit of mileage out of dish soap. But honestly, for me, I try to steer clear of it. I do better with the wool wash, baby shampoo. I've heard Orvis, got a gnat. I've heard Orvis works really good. Haven't tried that one. It's on my list though. But anyway, so the next thing, so moving to a wool or a fleece specific detergent, I feel made a huge, huge difference. It's just so much nicer when you wash with that. Then the third thing is I got a set of combs, and I just ordered them from the Woolery. That's where I tend to get my stuff when I want more bulk things. And this is what I've heard referred to as a Dutch combs. And that means I have one free comb, like one that moves, and the other comb is really more of like a short hackle, short as in distance. It's like 8 inches long. You'd batten down the hackle part. And I'm not sure if that's a great system or not. I know most of the combs that you see online tend to be people with two moving combs, or two potentially moving combs, but one gets kind of battened down in a little holder. But this is a different set, a different way to put together a combing set. And actually it works. It works great. I've combed all kinds of stuff on it, even Angora rabbit, no joke. I've never tried what you'd think of when you normally think of combs, right? Both of them that are unattached. And these combs are just middle of the road, not coarse, not fine, just something. And it works really, really well. Like I said, I put in Angora, which is obviously super fine. And then I also did some mohair on there. And it's just a whole different way to get your fiber prep. Okay, I get bored. That's what happens. That's what happens. I have the ability to stick to a thing for honestly a scary amount of time. But then all of a sudden I get to the point where I'm like, this is getting boring. I want to do something else. So, changing up the fiber prep or putting different colors on the comb and seeing how you can pull off the roving, and it's very, very interesting, and it's almost shocking how much difference you feel with the same darn fiber. It's the same stuff, but when you put it on your hand cards versus you work it with the flick carder versus you put it on your combs, it's a completely different experience for you and produces a completely different yarn. It's truly crazy, and you wouldn't think until you try it. And for me, that was very, very surprising. I mean, I knew you're supposed to get tons of difference, but I wasn't prepared. I would say I wasn't on board with the difference. That's not it. I wasn't, pre- I hadn't fully experienced myself the huge difference that changes in fiber prep make. So if you want, the catch here is though, I do realize combs are a little bit pricey. And I know I even did an article on this about using dog combs for your fiber prep. And while it's doable, to me, it's tedious. Wow, is it tedious? Those dog combs are all so little. So if you're happy with the amount of combing or carding that you can do off of dog brushes, then honestly, it does work. But when I tried it, I found it to be almost annoying because it's such a teeny, teeny amount of stuff of fiber you're working with at one time. But anyway, those more pet tools would be a way to get you into combing a little bit less expensively. And there's also it's almost like a rake that you use to uncap honey for extraction. And those I've seen videos of people using that as a comb. So if you got a bee supply place near to you, that'd be an easy way to get going with combs and see if you like it. But combs were fun, and it gave me a completely different fiber prep because I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Anything anything you buy commercially, while it's called combed top, it's not the same as what you would make at home. Right, what you would make at home, it is more finely tuned, is more well sorted. So it's comb top-ish commercially, but it's hardcore, absolutely comb top from your combs at home. So if you're looking for, oh gosh, maybe more of a perfectly accurate experience, or you want to see what did people use before they had all these really, really great online options, or go to a fiber festival and buy all this stuff from other people, what happens when you were prepping your own? Well, if you had a bit of a longer wool, comb top was the way. And actually, I'll go a little bit out of order here. The other thing that I started getting into more, and this was about maybe 3 years ago, I never really bought much. I never really bought much fiber. I would go to fiber festivals around here and maybe buy something, but to be honest, I usually just worked with what I had. But I so in the with the up my game theme, I decided to kind of bite the bullet and go buy some. And I don't know what my big holdup with it was, but for some reason I'm just not a really big buyer. And I decided to kind of jump in and buy some fiber. And wow, it's so interesting what all is out there and how different it is from what you're used to, especially if you start off with your own wool or other animal fibers and you're used to how you prepare it. It's just it's very interesting to see the huge variety out there and give yourself a little bit more of an expanded spinning experience. And that made a big difference to me, especially because our flock is commercial Dorset cross. There's some polypay in there, a little bit of Finn, as you heard, but for the most part, think Dorset. So if it didn't spin Dorset like, I didn't have a ton of experience with it. I didn't. So if I wanted something else, I had to start ordering in. So when I did it, it truly made a huge difference for me fiber wise, but also color wise, because especially if you're getting into the painted braids, the hand painted braids, some of that stuff, it's fascinating. The color combinations that other folks think of that, to be honest, I wouldn't have thought of. I wouldn't have thought of. And I've seen some spun up that, to tell you the truth, I would never bought that. Would have never bought that. I was like, that is gonna be yikes. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So buying what other people have created helps give you so much more of a broad experience and makes you realize that, wow, maybe my little rutted thinking needs expanded a touch, needs expanded. And just to experience what's going on out there and see if I like it or not. Now, on to the two biggest changers for me. The first is the drum carter. I've had it for about a year and a half now, and wow, wow, revolutionary for me in the difference in spinning. It just made a huge, huge difference in all of the, just it exploded my ability to make creative things. Especially, I love, love, love to blend fiber on the drum carder. It's just really fun. It's so neat to put the colors on there and then watch them kind of swirl into your yarn as you make it. And the drum carder, wow, wow, does it just hugely expand my spinning abilities. I really, really like it, and that was the first kind of big purchase I'd made to, I mean, I didn't need it. Who really needs a drum carder? For the most part, I didn't need it, but wow, I really, really wanted it, and when I got it, I was so glad I did. It is wonderful. It makes a huge, huge difference. You won't believe all the cool stuff that you can do once you get a drum carder, and all the, like, recombining you can do of what you already have in your stash that's just sitting there, and yeah, it was a good idea when you got it, but now, it's just sitting there, you're not using it. The drum carder made a huge difference with that. I can throw all kinds of stuff in there and see how it spins. And I love to make blends. Like, for instance, I don't get a lot of mileage out of 100% Angora. To me, it's it's just not what I'm looking for at the time. I know a lot of people love to spend 100% Angora. I prefer to spend more of a 50-50. And actually, same way with mohair. I love to throw mohair into just about anything. I think it's so neat because it adds like that little special sparkle, and it's not fake. That's my that's the favorite part of it. It adds some nice strength, and it gives you that just a little hint of a natural sparkle, especially if you get a naturally colored mohair. Nice. I really, really like it. But at least so far, I don't get a ton of satisfaction out of 100% mohair. However, I do want to qualify that statement. I am planning on making a mohair blanket. So I do hope to kind of mess around a little bit and see if I can make that work with a very high percent mohair, preferably 100%. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, so the drum carder has really, really taken my ability to spin cool things that I couldn't just do a great job with before, and blend to where I do want them, and the fibers the way I want them, so I can get a yarn that I like. And the other thing I do have to mention with the drum carder is I was worried about, I'll go back to the Angora. I was worried I wouldn't be able to handle it because I hadn't ever done such a great job with fine spinning. I'm getting there. I'm doing a ton better job now. But I couldn't, when I had the rabbits, I didn't have the spinning ability. I'm much, much closer to being a respectable Angora spinner. But because of how, honestly, kind of hard it was for me to get going on it at first, I decided to kind of work my way up. to 100% mohair. So I started with like a 10% and by weight. And then I went to like a 25% and then a 50. I'm sure you get where I'm going here. But the drum carder made that possible. Of course, I could have done it on the hand cards. Of course, I could have done it on the hand cards. But it just worked really, really well on the drum carder. And then the most recent kind of up my game thing that I've done is I got a new wheel. And my new wheel that I've had since the first of the year, so I've had it 10 months or so, is I got a matchless. And what sold me on the matchless was two things. First of all, I wanted to try double drive because the wheel I have is single. And I also read just glowing reviews. Everybody who got it loved it. So I thought, gosh, it looks so awesome and it's so versatile. You can run it pretty much any way you want. So my first wheel had Irish tension. So now I do actually hardly anything that way. I do mostly double drive or Scotch tension, depends. But having that versatility and moving to double drive, gosh, made just tons and tons and tons of difference. And when I started out, as I mentioned, my first wheel was Irish tension, which means it pulls quite a bit and it's excellent. It's top notch for making denser yarn, so more like rugs. But because I was a new spinner and using our wool, the combination of that, which there's nothing wrong with either one of those, but together I tended to make a very dense yarn. And it took me, oh gosh, a while to figure out how to make that respectable. And it's not the wheel. It isn't, because you can get excellent spinners who can spin excellent yarn on just about any wheel. So it was clearly me. It was. I just at the time I couldn't handle it. And getting a new wheel with a bit of a different approach, double drive's softer, I would say. It just it really opened my eyes to the fact that I had it in me. I just didn't really know how to make it happen until I had the right combination of the right things together. And switching to the new wheel, gosh, made a huge, huge difference. I really get a kick out of the new wheel. So that is a list of the things that I have added over the years, to be fair, over the years, to really up my spinning game. As I mentioned earlier, I have the free mini course. If you're new, it'll help you get started. Please check it out. You can sign up for the course at woolmaven.com/free. Or if you'd like to sign up for my newsletter, I have one of those as well. It goes out every couple weeks or so. And sometimes it's seasonal stuff. Sometimes it has more of a, hey, have you thought about this aspect of your spinning? It's just kind of a variety pack, seeing what's shaking. And if you're interested in the newsletter aspect of things, you can head on over to woolmaven.com/newsletter and sign up there as well. Anyway, I would love to have you at either spot. And thank you for listening. I so much appreciate your time. If you are more into the visuals or you've got some pictures to post, I would love to see what you're doing. Sign up for my Facebook group. It's Hand Spinning Yarn with the Spinning Wheel. Would love to see what you're up to there. You can post some pictures and kind of brag on yourself. Show me what you got going on, or actually post some ideas. Show me if you've gotten some of those really cool braided rovings in. I'm always curious what people buy because there's so many different choices. So anyway, would love to have you sign up for the course, join the Facebook group. It'll be awesome. Love to have you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and have a super day.